So I'm going to apologize in advance if I might be a bit scattered. I'm kind of trying to do this off the cuff because whenever I read things, it's just so I wanted to start talking about the nocturnal suburbia work first. I think a lot of you probably have seen those pictures. I started doing that work in Colorado because I grew up on the East Coast and suburbia was kind of a foreign place to me. And I felt really isolated, and so as a part of that, I started exploring ideas of neighborhood design, and I was really interested in the way that we're building neighborhoods in a way that actually isolates people from one another and also from the rest of the community, because in my neighborhood in particular, you have to get in your car if you want to go to a place that's located less than a mile from where we live, because you can't walk there because there's no sidewalks. So I became really interested in that aspect of community design. But then when I went to New York for grad school, I wanted to make a change. Obviously, I didn't have access to suburbia there. And so I didn't have a car. I guess I probably could have gotten there, but I didn't have a car. So one of the changes that happens when you live on the East Coast, I think, is that you're closer to people. I find it kind of jarring every time I come back here how the distance between me and other people is so vast in Colorado. And in New York, you get used to this constant contact with people, strangers all the time, all day long. And so necessarily, I'm observing people more closely than I can here, because usually we're all inside of a car, and that's as close as we get on the highway when we're flipping each other off. So I think that kind of influenced a little bit why the work became closer. I was always so distanced when I was photographing in suburbia from the houses and away from the people at night when I wouldn't run into them. But the basements, and this is the benefit of an artist talk, because you get the lowdown that doesn't go into the artist statement. Started in my sister's basement, which is where all of the photographs on these two walls came from my sister's basement. My sister is quite a bit older than I am, and we've always had a bit of a troubled relationship. And one of my issues with her is that things are always unresolved. She may have a fight with me, or there might be problems, and they never get dealt with. There'll be an outburst or a fight, and then it just gets shoved aside, and everybody just wants to pretend like whatever it was didn't happen. If we don't talk about it, it'll go away. It's kind of a sweeping under the rug sort of thing. And I was spending time at their house over Thanksgiving, and I was in the basement, which is a complete disaster. It used to be a play area for my nephew, but now he's all grown up and off in college, and so the basement is kind of left there with all this stuff that either they don't want to deal with anymore, so they stick it in the basement to get it out of the upstairs, or all the shit that they played with that they've never gotten rid of. And there's also my brother-in-law's heads, stuffed heads. Some of which he shot. He would go.
Can you extrapolate on stuffed heads?
You mean animal heads?
They are stuffed animal heads, not human heads. Yes, I would have definitely taken pictures of those if there were there. They're stuffed heads. Some of them he shot. Some of them were given to him. He's a plumber, and sometimes people have unorthodox ways of paying for service. Hey, I got this stuffed bird. And he'll be like, yeah, okay, and he'll take it home, and my sister will say, don't put that in the living room, take that downstairs, I don't want to see that. And also he likes to go, which I think is so funny, they go to this place in, I think it's like western Pennsylvania, and it's kind of like a reserve, and it's a Christian organization that flies in exotic animals, and you pay for how exotic the animal is that you're going to shoot. And I think maybe also size, I'm not sure. And then you go and stand there until it walks by, and then you shoot it. And you're set. And so, he goes once a year and does this, and so there's a boar head and a deer head, and so I started hanging out in the basement taking pictures because I was so fascinated by all the heads. And I've said I have assigned personalities to them all. Some of them are friendly and some of them aren't, partly based on how heavy they are and partly based on how much they smell. And there's this one that just got a new one. He's a Corsica. And I don't like him because his eyes are too far apart, and so he looks kind of shady to me. And I don't know, he just doesn't look friendly. But the deer, as you've seen, he's pretty friendly. He's pretty cool. I like to carry him around. He's soft and he doesn't stink like the taxidermy stuff. But anyway, I digress. I was fascinated with the basement because it was apparent to me suddenly that it is such a perfect metaphor for the psychological bullshit in my family. It's just, you have all this unresolved stuff, arguments, disagreements, bad feelings, whatever, and instead of dealing with it, you just shove it aside and put it in the basement. Just like the stuff that's in the basement. They don't want to throw it out, but they don't really want it anymore. They don't want to look at it, so they just stick it down there, but they can't really get rid of it. So it's not really trash, but they don't really want it anymore either. So it started with photographing down there. And of course, now they're redoing the basement. But that involves, I don't even know if I should go down that road. There's been some demolition, let's just say, but there hasn't been much progress. I'll leave it at that. Every time I go, it's more interesting and it's different because there's been more sort of destruction. So, I started talking to other people about the work and started finding that other people had similar issues with their families. But the thing that's interesting is this family. The reason I photographed this house is because the person was like, yeah, my family is the same way. But the way they deal with it is the mother and the daughters are all obsessive compulsive. So they package everything and they label them and they organize things into rows and they use Tupperware to hold their Tupperware. And it's kind of amazing. And so really it's the same in the sense that there's all sorts of unresolved dysfunction in the family, but the way they exhibit it externally is different. So this family is the same, but it just looks different on the outside. I think a lot of it has to do with how well you mask your shit, because everybody has it, it's just how well you hide it. So I also think that the one on the other side is very interesting because to me that Lego basement is this basement, but a generation removed, because this basement looked like that when the kids were young. And I don't know if someday that basement's gonna have stuffed heads in it or not. I don't want to presume because I don't really know that family very well, but still.
Maybe stuffed body parts.
But I think also that basement in particular touches on the consumerism issue of buying lots and lots of stuff. And I'm projecting what I think onto this family, I should say. And then being so busy because you don't have enough time to spend with your kids that you just buy all sorts of shit to pacify them. So I'm commenting a little bit on that. But it's kind of taken some interesting turns for me because I'm exploring a lot of other areas like church, and I'm not going to say, but I'm going to start another project soon that relates to all of this. And what's happening is that I'm interested in the way the spaces that we occupy reflect us. I started out with the way the environment that we're building was affecting our relationships with one another, because I felt like suburbia was causing the isolation, but I think it's a symptom of it. and that the isolation's there anyway, and the spaces that we inhabit reflect it, but they also affect it at the same time. So it's a little bit two-headed. The things that I'm learning about myself in school are that a lot of these projects, I don't plan them out. I kind of do things intuitively to start with, but then as I get further into it, I start to understand what I'm mining emotionally, and then I can direct what I'm doing. So in the beginning, it's not always clear. So at this point, I think the basement and home, churches, schools, and this next thing that I'm not going to discuss, all have to do with places of transition. They're all places that when you build an identity as you're growing up, you have, your parents, your home, your economic status, the country you live in, the churches you go to, the schools you go to, all of these things build your identity as you get older. And all of the places that I'm exploring seem to be those places that are what build our characters and the identities that we have and that we put out through the world. And the way we see the world is influenced by all of those things. So in a broad sense, it could be said that the work is about identity, but it's a little personal, which is good, because then it's important to me. What I'm doing is emotionally felt, I guess, but it has a broad application, I think, to other people. So I think that's kind of where the work is right now. It's still developing. And just for the record, rec room and basements are the same thing. So I think there was a little confusion about that.
So I have a question for you. Do you guys have a basement?
We do, and it's pretty darn boring, actually.
Yeah.
It's full of art.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm assuming that you've never thought to shoot your own basement. But
no, I did. I
yeah?
actually, that's one of the first things that someone said to me, and I tried. I even tried shooting in other parts of the house, and it just wasn't interesting. It feels like, in some ways, certain spaces have to be disconnected from me for me to be able to. This goes back to all the stuff you learn in grad school. You're learning about identity theory. I'm reading about it. One of the things that identity theory tells people is that they build their identity by how they differentiate themselves from other people. And if I can't set myself outside of your basement, I can't photograph it critically. That's a feeling I'm getting. I don't have any sort of psychological analysis for it. I think that's been my experience. Yes, Rachel.
Gaston Bachelard wrote in Poetics of Space about the, which I know you've read, and he wrote about kind of the sense of the basement of the word, the main level of the word, and the attic of the word, when you describe something. And I'm just wondering if you have any interest in looking at other kind of storage spaces, the way a basement becomes the immediate past. The attic always seems to have the relics of the very, very, very long distance past, the things that we've carried with us through each house, through each successive progression through the generations. Have you thought about attics at all?
I haven't really. I think one of the things that I've noticed, I don't think there's a lot of attics to be had in suburbia unless they're older neighborhoods. And when photographing basements on the East Coast, in the city, in Brooklyn and New York, it's not the same. I think my interest is in particular still focused on suburbia. And so it needs to be a suburban basement. And when I live in a place in Brooklyn that has a basement, and most spaces in Brooklyn have basements or attics that are shared. All the people in the house might have an area that's theirs. And this basement is superiorly creepy, cobwebs, mold. I sneeze every time I go down there. But the pictures just weren't reflective of anybody in the house. It was just reflective of a place to store boxes and air conditioners when they're not being used. So I feel like if I were to do attics, it would be talking about a different group of people if that makes sense. Of course, I'm always willing to try a new space.
Well, I think that probably the attic part of it is the age of the homes, you're right, and maybe you need to go to England and photograph some suburban attics in England.
So, hey, something that people have asked me quite frequently is whether the images are staged or not.
Oh, okay. That's an interesting thing too. This photographing in the basement, I've always been a shoot what you see sort of person. But I've started intervening with the space is what I want to say. I don't necessarily take full control in the sense that I'm constructing some sort of narrative. I'm not doing that, but there are things that I move around for different reasons. All of these were what they were, except for that.
I'm thinking like this one right here.
I stacked the toilet paper a little bit higher to make it show up in the picture, but otherwise that's exactly how it was. I never would have thought of putting toilet paper there. It seems so strange. These right here are when I took direct active. The person who I met that introduced me to this basement is an artist that she's a photographer, but she collects photographs and then she categorizes them, puts them in boxes, and they all have labels, and people come and they curate things out of them. So she's kind of a photographer and kind of a curator, and I ended up curating her basement without any real plan for it. There was a big pile of stuff organized into rows, labeled with numbers in the middle of the basement. And I just started taking things out of it and putting them under this light and photographing them by themselves. So in this basement, I definitely controlled everything. And in the Lego basement, that's how it was. So I think it's a little bit of both. I'm starting to take a more active role though, because I want to say something and I can't always articulate it, I guess. More questions? I know Rachel's got.
Would you say that then, like you're discussing the identity of the owners of these basements, the families in these basements, so almost their personality, almost their immediate personality, like this artist curates things and you respond to that. It's almost as though you're taking on their personality. You're dealing with their things for them.
Yeah.
Was there anything that has come out of your shooting these basements that has allowed these people to deal with their objects?
No, I don't. This family has gotten rid of actually quite a bit of it. After I shot these, they had a yard sale. And so they see these pictures as mementos of things that they had. Mementos of their past that they got rid of. So now they have pictures of them instead of the actual objects, which is kind of interesting. Somebody commented to me once that the basement is almost like a family album, and every one of them is different. They might have all their pictures organized really nicely, grouped by person in the family, or they might just have a box with all sorts of shit thrown into it, but the basement is just like that in that sense. Everybody's photo albums are pictures of the family, but they might organize them differently.
How has your sister reacted to the images of her basement?
Well, like I said, she's got all sorts of plans for what they're going to do with the basement.
But like, I mean, does she think that there's anything like?
She thinks it's really weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, she definitely thinks it's strange.
And do you think she sees anything in them, or?
No. No, I don't. Honestly, don't know that she's taken an interest to see some of them. She's always saying, "What the hell are you doing down in the basement? Are you gonna come back upstairs? Don't touch my stuff." Like she'd know it was moved. I found a will that was from like 1983, and I said, geez, you should probably get rid of that because it was very outdated as far as who things were being left to. And she was like, don't be snooping in my stuff. It's sitting right there with 5 inches of dust on it. I'm sorry. So, you know, for her, it's just like an intrusion, and she doesn't understand what my deal is. We're so different.
It's more striking, like the way portraits do. I've never seen photographs of inanimate objects that have so much personality.
Yeah,
It's really fascinating.
thanks.
Did you, like these four in particular, they're all kind of these infant or baby items. Did you, like why did you pick those in particular? Because, I mean, I guess when I look at them, it really kind of tells a story, you know, sort of these particular items with the context that they have, you know, being wrapped in plastic in these sort of vacant, empty spaces. Did you shoot other stuff in this basement besides the baby stuff?
Yeah. I shot all. There was a really great dollhouse. There was a bunch of chairs, some games. There was one called Easy Money, which was really awesome. It belonged to the grandparents. With a really nice backgammon set in a leather case. Yeah, I did photograph a bunch of other stuff. I like these because there's something a little sinister about covering children's toys in plastic, because it's one of the things that they tell you to keep away from children. And I think of death and suffocation when I see them. Other people get other things. Someone at one point commented that it was like lingerie for children's toys, which I thought was kind of frightening.
That's a creepy
I didn't want to
statement.
go any further with that conversation. But yeah, I kind of come from the whole David Lynch sort of background, and I really love that weirdness because I'm sort of weird myself, and I like that about these images.
Yeah, I really like that feeling of them sort of. They're really intense to me, anyway.
Yeah. It's like something happened.
Yeah, I guess it really had a sense of loss when I looked at them.
Yeah.
Maybe it was, well, and you talked about that they were sort of, in a way, portraits of the people whose spaces they were, you know, and I kind of wondered if had something happened to a child or something.
No, they had all grown up, actually. That one behind you is the carriage for the woman who's the artist that introduced me to this family. So she's my age. I think these are from her sister's kids who are now too old for these. They're 5 or 6 now, so these are like toddler size, you know, like a car seat. This is actually a crib mattress, not a full-size
The
mattress.
scale of that one always really freaks me out when I realize it's a mattress.
Yeah.
I think it looks like it could be a full-size mattress.
Yeah, the scale is confusing. Propped up with a soda bottle.
It's like one of the biggest light bulbs I've ever seen.
That's my sparkle filter.
How important, I haven't talked to you very much about these, but about the question I'm going to ask is, how important is it to you that we can identify that the space is a basement? Because in your other series, like, it's obvious that in Nocturnal Suburbia that it is suburbia, or, you know, if you photograph schools, it's obviously a school, but in the ones at your sister's house, it's not necessarily a basement if you're just looking at it without knowing, but I didn't know if is that important to the work to recognize that?
I think it is, because that's kind of the whole concept that the metaphor comes from. I think contextually the idea that it's a basement. Suburban basements in particular, often drywalled like this one, or unfinished but pristine like this, because obviously they haven't lived in this house that long. So I think it's a particular kind of basement. Yeah. But I think also you don't necessarily have to get everything that I'm saying. You can get something else that has nothing to do with me out of the images of characters.
Any other